Okay, we are going to be going live here in just a couple seconds.
Cindy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. We're still waiting for a few folks to come on, and then I'll look to you when we're ready. Or Cammie, are you going to let us know when we're ready?
I'll let you know when we're ready.
Okay, very good. We'll be on in shortly, folks. Okay, I'm seeing our full council on.
Just 1 second. Okay, we're ready.
Okay, very good. We'll begin. I'm Mayor Jeff Ellsworth. This is the City of St. Helena regular City Council meeting, Tuesday, April 27th, 2021. Cammie is going to lead us with information on our remote access and our Spanish language interpretation.
Okay, tonight to participate in public comment by phone, please dial 669-900-6833 and at the prompt enter 871-5552-7726 and press pound. And during public comment, press *9 to speak. Tonight's meeting will have live Spanish interpretation. To access the interpretation, you will need to use the Zoom application from either your cell phone, tablet, or computer. Instructions on how to use the Zoom app are listed in English and Spanish on the agenda posted on the city's website. Once you join the meeting from the Zoom application, you will see a small globe at the bottom of the screen. Click on the globe and you will be able to access the live interpretation. Marcy and Claudia are our interpreters this evening.
Thank you. And now we'll move to the Pledge of Allegiance. If folks would mute your microphones and place your hand on your heart and follow with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we'll move now to our roll call.
Mayor Ellsworth,
Here.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Here.
Councilmember Hall,
Here.
Hardy,
Here.
Chateau.
Very good. And now we'll move into our adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes on this evening's agenda that we need to be aware of?
Yes, there is, Mr. Mayor. New business, item 12.1 will be heard prior to public hearing, item 10.1. Other than that, the agenda stands as is.
Very good. Is there a motion for adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Councilmember Hardy,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Chateau,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Thank you. And as we get into our public forum section, I just briefly want to recognize all the continued effort from council and staff as we work through into the COVID recovery phases. It's been a remarkable work and effort ongoing. As we step into the next few months, we'll also be focusing on wildfire preparedness and water conservation. These are where energy will be moving as we sort of navigate these recovery phases of COVID. We'll get a little more information deeper in the meeting, but I just want to put that out there as we move forward. So we'll move into our public forum, and this is where members of the public are entitled to speak on matters of municipal concern, not on the agenda. And each person's comments shall be limited to 4 minutes. Each person is entitled to speak on any non-agendized item only once at any meeting, and brief questions by council members for clarifications may be posed and answered, and council members may make requests that items be placed on future agendas. But in accordance with state law, no substantive discussion or action may take place unless and until the matter properly appears on the agenda. Is there any, at this point, public comment?
There are 3 raised hands. Oh, there's more raised hands. Will, I'm going to allow you to speak. You can address the council. You'll have 4 minutes to address the council. You can unmute yourself.
Wonderful. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor and council members, my name is Will Maroon. I'm a proud co-owner of a Picasso home in St. Helena, and I'm sharing a statement today because I believe there are many misconceptions about Picasso, the company, and the Picasso owners being shared throughout the community. I'd like to share my own story so that you can see Picasso owners are just like other owners in St. Helena, and that Picasso homes like mine will bring many benefits to St. Helena. One of the common themes that I hope you take away from my presentation and discussion today is that Picasso owners such as myself are not transient. Conversely, we are engaged and enrich the community as other residents would, because truly it is our own community. Actually, short of being a member of the local school PTA, I'm not really sure, for myself anyway, how I could be more engaged in the community. A little about me. I am a family man with kids, teenage kids. I was born and raised in the Bay Area, live in the Peninsula, grew up in the Peninsula. I grew up working in a family bakery for 30 some odd years and currently working as an executive in the food business and have over the past several years. I am a longtime patron of the Valley in St. Helena since the early 90s. Over the years, I've contributed to charities and other things in the area, and been to lots of local events. I'm a big foodie, so St. Helena is certainly a place for me. I plan to retire in St. Helena, and the wonderful thing about Picasso is that it creates an opportunity as a stepping stone to making that happen for me and my family. A little bit about Picasso specifically from my perspective. When we got serious about looking for a property up in St. Helena, I was a little discouraged from the prices of homes, and a lot of the things that I could afford were kind of small condos or small properties, and that just wasn't for me. And when we learned about Picasso and the co-ownership model, we were actually thrilled because it's ideal for our situation. I have work and family here in the Bay Area, down on the peninsula, so the sole ownership, home ownership of a second home was kind of tough for me, and Picasso makes second home ownership possible for me and my family. Another thing as well about the Picasso model is that other owners are vested in the house and the community, just like I am. They own a significant chunk of the house. They end up taking care of the house and the community, just like other people would, other residents would. Because the cost is not inexpensive to be part of the model. It's not expensive such that it's prohibitive, but just right so that we can become part of the community. Homes are exquisitely taken care of inside and out. I think that helps add to the neighborhood value from a property value standpoint, from an aesthetic standpoint. And I truly believe that Picasso cares generally about the community that it resides in. They all are wonderful people, a diverse group of people. I do have friends that I've made in the St. Helena area and that live and work in that area. I patronize local businesses on a regular basis. We use local vendors to keep up the house and for our own personal needs. We go to local events, and we have family and friends that visit that in turn patronize local businesses. We generally do care about the community, its residents, and our neighbors. We adore St. Helena, love being part of this community, and while building lasting memories for our family. We felt it was important to share our story in St. Helena so that you can see that we are just like other homeowners that care about their community, that care about the neighborhood, and care about our home. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for the public comment. Is there additional public comment?
There certainly is. Let's see. Gary Acosta, I am going to allow you to speak. You have 4 minutes to address the council.
Mr.
You
Mayor.
can unmute yourself.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor and council members, my name is Gary Acosta. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, also known as NAREP. NAREP is the nation's largest Hispanic business organization with over 40,000 members and 100 local chapters throughout the United States. We are the leading advocate for homeownership for the Hispanic community. I'm also a proud member of the advisory board. I'm joining this meeting today to highlight the benefits of co-ownership as an innovative vehicle for lowering housing barriers and creating economic opportunities. While the Hispanic community in particular has made gains in homeownership in recent years, Black and Hispanic communities continue to lag significantly behind the general population. And that gap is even greater when it comes to ownership of second homes. I joined the Picasso's advisory board because I see co-ownership, whether it be for primary or secondary homes, as an innovative tool to help close these gaps. Co-ownership already exists today in many forms. For many first-time homebuyers, for example, co-ownership allows 2 or more families to achieve homeownership by pooling their incomes and resources. In the second home market, which Picasso serves, co-ownership opens the door for a broader spectrum of people to enrich their lives that way. These sales also create additional income opportunity for local real estate professionals who represent them. NAREP's research is clear. Homeownership is the single most powerful strategy for closing the racial and ethnic wealth gap. As you consider opportunities to fulfill the Council's mission to promote a culture of equity, diversity, and inclusion, I urge you to consider opportunities to lower barriers and not erect them in housing and homeownership. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the public comment. Is there additional public comment?
There is. Austin, I'm going to allow you to speak. You have 4 minutes to address the council. You can unmute yourself.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Austin Allison. I'm a proud resident of Napa Valley, where I live with my wife, Angela, and our newborn son. I'm also the CEO of Picasso, which supports buyers who wish to co-own second homes together. I want to introduce myself and share why I believe co-ownership can be such a great opportunity for both St. Helena and second home buyers. My wife and I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, in working class families who certainly could never afford a second home. For Angela and I, owning a second home was always an aspiration. A few years ago, we were finally able to achieve that dream and purchase a home in Lake Tahoe. Our second home has enriched our lives in so many ways. We have special family rituals and restaurants we enjoy each time we visit. And I know our time there will become even more special as my son grows up. I founded Picasso to lower the barriers to second home ownership because I believe that more people should be able to enrich their lives in the same way. Today, communities like St. Helena are experiencing a surge in demand for second homes. In fact, buyer demand for second homes has increased 100% over the last year as more people gain the ability to work remotely. Most of these buyers are targeting homes affordable to the local workforce, making it even harder for local teachers, firefighters, and civil servants to buy a home. Most of these buyers are also likely to become absentee owners who use their home just a few weeks each year, which is an inefficient use of housing stock, bad for the environment, and harmful to the local economy. While second home demand is unlikely to abate in the near term, Picasso's approach reduces the impacts while bringing sustainable economic support to the community. First, unlike second home buyers who compete for the limited supply of moderately priced homes in a community, Picasso owners instead pool their resources to buy an upper tier home. Just one Picasso has the opportunity to lift up to 8 buyers from competition for homes affordable to the local workforce. Second, unlike absentee owners, Picasso owners occupy their home year-round. This means the owners are getting their hair cut, supporting local restaurants and retail shops, and engaging in the community throughout all seasons. For buyers, co-ownership is a powerful tool for reducing housing barriers. We're seeing this firsthand in how this opens up the door for underrepresented groups. In St. Helena, near half of Picasso clients are non-white or identify as LGBTQ, and most of them are the first in their families to have had the opportunity to purchase a second home. Outside of Picasso, there are other important and common uses of co-ownership, such as multi-generational families who pool their resources to buy their first primary home, or family members who share ownership of an inherited property that has been in the family for decades. The Council's mission highlights 3 goals: to promote a culture of equity, diversity, and inclusion, number 1, number 2, to support thriving families, and number 3, to ensure long-term economic sustainability. Co-ownership meets all of these objectives while unlocking meaningful and new opportunities in housing, particularly for underrepresented groups. I urge you to view co-ownership as the powerful tool that it is to achieve these goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the public comment. Is there additional public comment?
There is. Francisco, I'm going to allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and you have 4 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Francisco Guzman. I'm here with my wife, Gloria, and we are also co-owners of a Picasso home in St. Helena. We wanted to take this time to share with you our story. Owning a second home is being a dream of us and something that seemed very unattainable, particularly during the pandemic. The idea of having a place, a refuge away from the city was really, really appealing. But for many reasons, owning the work associated with owning a place or maintaining a second home has always kept us away from this idea. And Picasso had really helped us to overcome these issues. And we're proud to be the first ones in our family to own a second home. Absolutely thrilled to be part of the St. Helena community. You know, we did have some reservations at first because co-ownership was new to us. We were concerned that this may not feel like our home, but you know, we will not be accepted by the community, but we have had the very experience the other way around. We have been going to St. Helena from the Bay Area for about a year now, and we've established several family traditions and routines. To begin with, we have been taken aback by the beauty of this place. We can proudly say that we have experienced each one of the seasons in St. Helena. We enjoy our morning walks with our 7-year-old daughter, going to get coffee at the station in Main Street. Our daughter loved the ice cream at Chocolato, and we were surprised to have such a Mexican influence in the city. For one, the owner there, you know, already recognizes us and prepares for us our favorite Mexican snacks. The three of us spent last Christmas in St. Helena, and we were able to cook our traditional Mexican dishes with groceries from Azteca Market. And we also love the picnics at Satui. And we still have a lot of wineries that we haven't been able to visit, and we want to visit. We are really grateful to have this special place to spend time away from the city and create memories. We love St. Helena, and we love being part of this community. We felt that it was important for us to share the story, coming from people who this is the first time that they have access to this opportunity. I want to thank you for your attention.
Thank you for the public comment. Is there additional public comment?
Michael, I'm going to allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and address the council for 4 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Michael Sine, and I'm a proud co-owner of a Picasso as well. I came to this call today because I was aware of some negative perceptions about Picasso in the community, and I wanted to share a comment today to help the council and community understand that Picasso owners like myself and Francisco, who just spoke, are invested in St. Helena just like other owners. A little bit about myself. My wife and I were born and raised in the Bay Area and have frequented St. Helena for years. We've driven up Highway 29 on countless weekends, including 7 years ago when we got married in the area. We've always had a goal and a dream of owning a second home in St. Helena due to our love of the picturesque downtown you can't miss as you're driving through the area, and some of our favorite restaurants, and of course the many wineries. So when we came across Picasso, I was intrigued by the opportunity to co-own a home. You know, with Picasso, I felt like I was making an investment in an actual property that I could visit and revisit and treat like my own home here in Oakland. Additionally, we felt confident the small group of co-owners would treat our home the same as us due to the required initial investment, and Picasso provided maintenance we'll all make contributions towards to make sure that it's maintained. In the 6 months since we've owned our home, my wife and I have developed traditions just like anyone else in the community, like daily bike rides down White Sulphur Springs Road, or walks across town to explore the shops. You know, although we love squeezing in a good meal or two at Charter Oak and Farmstead, it's probably not sustainable every single day, but you'll probably catch us more frequently visiting and ordering takeout or delivery, or stopping through Azteca Market, Pizzeria Travigne, and of course, Gott's. We love being a part of this community and are even more excited to introduce our newborn son, who was born just 2 weeks ago, to this community and home in the coming months. I really don't see a world where we'll ever want to leave or share or sell our share of our home simply because of how attached we feel to it, our traditions that we've developed, and the community. We purchased this home to create memories just like any other person or family in this community, and we feel very fortunate to call St. Helena home. Thank you so much for letting me speak today.
Thank you for the public comment. Is there additional public comment?
There is. Elizabeth, I'm going to allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and address the council.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Elizabeth Alcott, and I'm a local real estate agent that has been serving the Napa Valley and living in the Napa Valley for the past 20 years. I'm joining this meeting today to highlight what my experience has been with Picasso and with Picasso buyers. Since the onset of the pandemic, after the first few weeks, I've witnessed firsthand the substantial increase in demand for second homes. Professionals living in the Bay Area now are enjoying permanent remote work flexibility, and owning a second home makes a lot more sense than it used to. Many of these buyers have budgets in the $500,000 to $700,000 range, which means that many of them are competing with the limited supply of condos and other middle to lower priced homes that are affordable to those that live here and work full time. Picasso offers these buyers more options. With that same $500,000 budget, they can own 1/8 of a $4 or $5 million property with full support from Picasso to care for and maintain the property. It's not only a great benefit to the buyers, but this approach is helpful for reducing competition for these middle tier homes. It also generates new inventory, as second home owners rarely use their home, have the opportunity to sell a portion of it to other buyers. These situations generate new opportunities for buyers and are growing across the US. For me personally, when I was first introduced to Picasso, I also had some skepticism, and I really wanted to understand it and wanted to make sure that these were people and that the concept was no rentals allowed, and that people would truly be having a vested interest in the community and having a vested interest in caring for their homes. This is what I've seen. I cannot tell you the excitement as I've seen these buyers purchase, as I've seen other real estate agents that are buyer representatives be able to introduce folks to homes here in St. Helena. So I just wanted to take a moment and say that I've just found the buyers to be very respectful, conscientious people who love the region, who are invested in it just like us. And I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts with you, and I felt it was important to bring these thoughts to light. Thank you.
Thank you for the public comment. Is there additional public comment?
There is. Sandy, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and address the council. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Sandy Thompson, 1457 South Whitehall Lane. Mayor Ellsworth and City Council members, again, thank you for your rollout of the vaccine coordination. Well done. I'm due for my second next week, and I'm super thrilled about that. Today, I come before you to add to my issues with respect to the request by Upper Valley Disposal Services and Clover Flats Landfill to expand their operations. Specifically, this company is asking the county and Joint Powers Authority to amend their conditional use permit. I have spoken to you in the past about my issues with this operation, specifically in heightened fire conditions and without a competitive bidding process. But tonight, my comments will focus on the equally alarming issue: no requirement by the county to undergo a full environmental impact review and assessment, as demanded by CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act. This is jaw-dropping, given the company's past violations, the conditions at these facilities, and with the knowledge that the company is now asking the county and the city of Helena, by association with the Joint Powers Authority, for a public benefit. I set forth an abbreviated history and a set of current conditions that should demand this full EIR assessment. 1, an unregulated radioactive waste was stored at Clover Flats for nearly a year. This material was highly flammable and sourced from an extraction operation in North Dakota. This waste sat on top of our watershed and the Napa River, which is the source for much of the vital water for our agricultural industry. 2, the existence of gases which naturally occur in the breakdown of refuse materials are significant and present at both facilities. This is unavoidable, but expanding the use at both facilities will likely increase the amount of gaseous residue. In the case of Clover Flats, this flammable byproduct exists in a canyon up against a forested mountain range with single access egress. Both facilities are in close proximity to residential neighborhoods, ones that have already faced significant fire threats. And we know that there is elevated fire risk this season and beyond due to continuing drought conditions and underlying climate change. 3, chemical explosions have occurred at Clover Flats. Employees were injured and some hospitalized. 4, cut, fill, grading, and construction of infrastructure improvements is ongoing. We reside and work in an environment that is delicately balanced to work well, even with the perils that Mother Nature throws at us. It takes a lot of effort by all of us to maintain this balance. The public deserves to have full disclosure of the impacts of the existing and future operations of both Upper Valley Disposal Services and Clover Flat Landfill. We need to know what the impacts will be on the balance and enjoyment of our properties and the Napa Valley lifestyle. As a council, please demand.
We're at our 4 minutes. Thank you for the comments. I'm getting an echo. Cindy, are you hearing that as well?
You're good now. We
Okay,
still have
very good.
additional public comment.
Yes, is there
Marcus,
additional?
you can, yes, I'm going to allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and address the council.
Thank you, Council. I want to talk about Picasso. My name is Marcus Kirkwood, and I'm a business owner and resident here in St. Helena with my partner Natalie and our 2 young daughters. My company remodels and sells houses, and I was first introduced to Picasso when they made an offer on a home we were selling on Madrona. Because the property had not yet closed and our company was still in the tax records as owner when Picasso started marketing it for sale, many people speculated that my company and Picasso were one and the same, and I'd like to publicly clear the air on that subject. Beyond the sale of property, I have zero affiliation or interest in Picasso. The reason why I'm publicly supporting Picasso and their co-ownership model is twofold. First, I believe any ways we can make communities like St. Helena, places where the legacy of discrimination so strongly shapes the demographic makeup, more accessible for a broader group of people, are worth serious consideration. As a person of color, the lack of diversity in this community is stark and problematic. It's important to note that this region was considered a sundown town for many generations, meaning that people of color were not welcome in this community after dark or risk being met with hostility and violence. Covenant deed restrictions also barred people of color property ownership in some cases. These important realities, many of which many would rather forget and pretend never existed, speak to why Napa County is less than 1% Black. There is almost no Asian community, despite Chinese folks being amongst the earliest settlers of the region, and so much of the Hispanic population is segregated and underrepresented in political and ownership class. Some may not see relevance in this history, but as a person whose grandfather likely couldn't have owned a house, the house that I live in when he was my age because he looked like me, this history and its legacies are very relevant to me. Some of the sentiments being expressed in opposition to housing co-ownership strike a nerve to my sensibilities. The notion that allowing, quote, others into our community will somehow dilute the character of this town is not a sentiment I could ever support at the expense of others' ownership rights. To me, though I can understand the legitimate concerns of St. Helena's changing social landscape, I am deeply troubled by the persistent mindset of exclusion that often targets opportunities for access into this community for people who could otherwise not afford to be here, but nonetheless add value on the whole. From what I understand, half of the people that bought into Picasso's co-ownership model here in St. Helena are people of color or LGBTQ, which stand to enrich our community with their perspectives and experiences and add character and culture to this small town in ways that have historically not been available as a matter of design. I believe this will be a good thing for those who make friends with their new neighbors, a good thing for my family and my two daughters growing up here, and a good thing for the community at large. I believe the vast majority of opposition to the new families that will join this community is based on misunderstandings and misinformation being shared. I hope and believe that deeper understandings will clear the air for these new families to thrive here. The second reason why I'm publicly supporting co-ownership in St. Helena is simply because it is the lawful right for people to buy homes in the United States, and any attempt to restrict who can purchase a home is a violation of established law in this country. One method for restricting gay people from buying homes was not to allow two men on the same deed unless they were immediate family. Most real estate agents around here have seen deeds that explicitly deny ownership to, quote, Chinese or, quote, Negroes and other discriminatory practices, but they ignore that language and recognize it as discriminatory, antiquated, and wrong. To deny people from purchasing property as a group in order to make it more affordable is not something the city of St. Helena has a right to lawfully restrict. If I choose to pool my money with my three younger brothers and buy a house, that is my lawful right, as it is the buyers of Picasso's shared co-ownership model. From the legal standpoint, there is no difference. And using a, quote, timeshare ordinance that was specifically written to exclude a particular kind of commercial hospitality enterprise in order to restrict people from owning a home in St. Helena is on its face a perversion of law to meet a discriminatory end that will undoubtedly cost people the opportunity of owning a house here in St. Helena. St. Helena has a long history of discrimination, and those that sought to join based on false pretense. I just want to say I openly welcome and embrace anybody who's fortunate enough to call St. Helena home and think it's worth advocating for their opportunity to do so.
Thank you.
And sorry for going
over. Thank you for the public comment. Is there additional public comment?
There is, Mr. Mayor. Dave, I'm going to allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and address the council. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Council, for allowing me to speak. My name is David Sampson. I am a real estate agent and local in the Valley here. I have personally dealt with Picasso. I really wanted to speak to access and opportunity, and I don't think I can do it better than Marcus just did. That being said, my personal experiences with Picasso have been providing an opportunity. We have a real house, as an agent in particular, we have a shortage. And here's an opportunity for a second home buyer that desperately wants to be a part of this economy, a part of this community, and has a strong desire to be here. When we open that world up to 8 folks with one home that are going to add value in every way, we're providing access and opportunity to a broad spectrum of people that would otherwise possibly not be able to live here at St. Helena in our beautiful valley. It disturbs me to see any, as subtle as it may be, as a timeshare ordinance. It definitely reeks of exclusion. We should be working hard to provide inclusion. We should be working hard to have people that want to be a part of this community, want to spend their money here, have their children, families, and friends come. And I'll be very brief in this. It's clearly the kind of simple, easy inclusion that we should all be embracing. It allows home ownership at a level that's different than just a visitor coming to town. These folks are invested here. They're paying property taxes as a group, as an LLC, and property rights. How many LLCs I sell homes to with multiple owners? Many. I do a fair amount of business in this valley, and there's plenty of that. To be exclusionary, it just reeks of, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Love high expectations, love the idea of, we have something special here, but we want to diversify this community, provide access and opportunity, and Picasso is a perfect example of how we can think outside the box and get people here that want to be a part of this. And it's just going to add value to everything that we do. I'll stop there. Really a solid group of folks. They've been easy as far as the business side, but the most important thing is bringing people to our community that want to be here. Diversifying this community is a necessity. And this isn't a short-term party house rental. And there's some folks that have that sense. That's not what we're doing here. And I fully support and will push and fight to make sure we provide access and opportunity. And I think Picasso is really thinking outside the box, and we should embrace that. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for the public comment. Is there additional public comment?
We have one additional public comment. Nancy, I'm going to allow you to speak. You have 4 minutes to address the council. If you can unmute yourself.
Good evening, Mayor, council, managers, and all the rest of you. This whole Picasso thing to me is really unfortunate. Maybe most importantly, because on the one hand, yes, there's this diversity of people that are being given opportunity to buy in. And we, as a city, have declared that we want it, and we welcome people of different races, different identities, of all the different adjectives we can put in there. But to say that people are moving in to provide, this provides diversity and opportunity for people that have this strong desire to be here, but not strong enough to buy what they can afford as a single home owner, such as a condominium. If they really want to be a part of the community and that's all they can afford, why don't they buy the condominium instead of this sneaky approach, as far as I'm concerned, where they're telling us or trying to tell us that we can't have residential neighborhoods be maintained in the manner in which they were designed, and that the distinct huge majority wants to keep them that way. We want single family homes built in residential neighborhoods to house single families. It's not about inclusivity or exclusivity, and to make it that way is a very, I don't even have the words for it. It's not neighborly, that's for doggone sure. So it's unfortunate, because I believe with all my heart, regardless of the past of St. Helena and so many other places all across this country, we embrace diversity, we are welcoming diversity, and we're trying to take steps to encourage it. But for a group of people to come in and exploit our town because they have the means and the money to do so is not community. So, you know, for all the making it about race or opportunity or this, that, and the other, there are sure a lot of people that would love to live in one of those cheesy condominiums so they could be a part of this community. So I'm sorry. I don't know if you guys have been looking on social media much, but this whole thing has got a bad taste. And if they really wanted to do something, why didn't Picasso come to the city and say, look, we have a business plan. We'd like to do something like this in your community. How can we do it? Instead of this really untasteful exploitation, in my view. Thank you.
Thank you for the public comment. Is there any additional public comment?
I'm not seeing any other public comment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move now to we'll close the public comment and move now to our reports by staff and city council, future agenda items, and AB 1234 reports. This is reports by staff and or council members on items of general interest. Brief questions for clarification may be posed and answered, and council members may request that items be placed on a future agenda. Except under certain circumstances, the Brown Act prohibits any other discussion or action by the city council. I will begin calling on our city attorney to see if there's anything to report.
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing to report this evening. We did have a closed session last week. I believe that was on, I'm sorry, I don't have my calendar up, but I believe it was on Friday, and there was no reportable action from that item. And then the council did have a closed session immediately before this meeting, and I generally report on those, but I did not attend that since it was a closed session on a personnel evaluation for the city manager, but I expect there was no reportable action from that item either.
That is correct. Thank you.
And that's all I have to report.
Okay, very, very well. And I'll move on to our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. The finance director and I will be sharing a couple of important dates with the community tonight on coming meetings. And I wanted to touch on a couple of the items that will be on our next agenda. This is the May 11th agenda. Our agenda today typically will include a forecast of some of those items, and those are omitted today. So this will include a consideration of nonprofit grant awards. The city will also be taking next steps on its diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that we began last year. We're going to be bringing the updated vision and mission statements to you for formal approval, as well as our 2021-2022 work plan. I'm also going to share my screen. On May 19th, the city is going to have an emergency preparedness town hall. And this town hall will be, I hope you can see that. Okay, this is a flyer that advertises the town hall. It's an emergency preparedness meeting. We're going to have our police chief, our fire chief, the city manager, and the city clerk touching on communications in addition to fire preparedness. And it's really all emergency preparedness. So that's coming on the 19th. And that meeting will begin at 6 p.m. And I believe our finance director will have a couple of other updates for you.
Very well. And we'll move on to our finance director.
Great, thank you so much. There's two meetings coming up. The first meeting is going to be this Friday, which is April 30th. It's at 10 a.m. And this is the first meeting of the Water Advisory Board. And this is the first time that they're meeting. There are several items that they'll be tackling that day. The first is an orientation. So just talking about what is the role of that group, as well as Brown Act and some of the other legalities that they need to be aware of. They will be selecting their chair and vice chair. They will also provide a review of current developments in the water phase emergencies. And some of that will also include information that will be touched on tonight during the penalty discussion item, as well as the urgency ordinance. And then there will also be a review and potential approval of application and use for exception permits. So that is something that the Water Advisory Board is tasked with. So that will give us the official procedures put into place where members, where water customers can actually file for any type of exception permits. And then from there, it's going to be setting the regular meeting dates. The Water Advisory Board needs to meet at least once monthly. However, depending on how many of the exception permits are requested, we might be meeting every 2 weeks. And tentatively, we're probably going to be slated the second and fourth Fridays of the month. The second meeting that I wanted to make everyone aware of is on May 13th. This is a Thursday. It will be from 9 a.m. until noon. That will be our first City Council budget workshop. And at that point, a draft budget will be presented to the public and to the City Council for review and discussion. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And we'll move on to our city clerk.
Nothing to report.
And our public works.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing to report.
Thank you. From planning and building.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing to report.
Okay, very good. And police and fire. And I'm not seeing anybody here. I just wanted to get the date again on the preparedness meeting that we're putting together in May. Could I get that one more time?
It's going to be May 19th.
And the time?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Very good. Thank you. Okay, and then we'll move to our council members. We'll begin with Councilmember Hall.
No update tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Chateau.
Just mention that we did have our countywide climate change meeting. And I was so proud to be able to say that St. Helena, we had signed on to that joint powers agreement. There was just one other city that wasn't able to, but they're going to shortly do it. So hopefully we'll have that good news soon that we've all signed on. And we talked at the meeting about what are the next action steps that we can take while we wait to do that. There are a bunch of items. Both the mayor and I had to hop off to get to our special meeting, so we didn't get to hear where the group landed, but it looked like a lot of us were talking about wanting to focus on electrical vehicle infrastructure and see what we could do countywide on that. There was also an item on there about looking at zero waste events.
Very good. Thank you. Your screen froze for a moment. Was that with the extent of your comments?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, very good. And Vice Mayor Doring.
Nothing to report at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got oh, I'm sorry. And then I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy.
Mayor Ellsworth, nothing to report.
Thank you. My apologies. Appreciate your jumping on. So I've got a few things. I'm going to go through a list. I'll be fairly quick, but it's a little bit of material here. First, I just want to reiterate as we move forward, getting everybody's minds thinking about water conservation and fire preparedness. This is work that we all have to do together. So I just want to plant that seed. We'll be talking more about water later in the meeting. But our community really needs to be getting this as our objectives moving forward. Over the last few weeks, I met with the Rainbow Action Network. They've got a rainbow kit. It's an educational kit celebrating inclusivity with our LGBTQ plus community. This is a kit that has a training that goes with it. And there's a discussion about a meeting being set up in May to help folks learn how this kit works in the community. So more information will come out about that. Cinco de Mayo is coming up, and that's a chance for us all to look for opportunities to celebrate our multiculturalism and also celebrate our multilingualism, bilingualism here, and really highlight what an asset that is in our community. There have been folks that have been talking about working on an electric tractor demo in May. That's coming up. A lot of talk in town about speeding in the community and trying to help work with our community to slow down driving. We have a lot of kids on bikes, folks out walking. We're trying to really build a bike and walking friendly community. So it's going to be on all of us to really recognize the need to reduce our speeds and keep this a really friendly biking and walking town. Call it Club 25, driving the speed limit of 25 or less. Also through the community the last few weeks, hearing more interest in talking about an infrastructure bond. I went to a number of board meetings that I'm on. I share on the Napa Valley Transportation Authority with Vice Mayor Doring. And one of the conversations moving forward there is talking about the idea of roundabouts on 29, as we look between here and Napa. That's part of an ongoing conversation. Was at the WIC meeting, which is the Watershed Information and Conservation Council, and talking there about the drought contingency plan that's cross-jurisdictional, sort of full county and all the jurisdictions talking. Also the groundwater sustainability plan advisory committee also talking about our water issues cross-jurisdictionally. So as we get into our conversation later tonight, it is also a conversation happening, through every jurisdiction in the county. And on the Climate Action Committee, great steps moving forward, linking that up cross-jurisdictionally, as Councilmember Chateau mentioned. I also saw a awards presentation for students presenting artwork and poetry regarding climate. And I'm hoping they'll put together a compilation of their work for us all to hear these voices saying it's up to us to really look for ways to protect their future and their right to a future. So hopefully that will be forthcoming, a sort of compilation of that. And also on housing, rehousing after COVID and the fires. Housing will be a big priority this year, but talking about what does it look like in a post-COVID and through fire emergencies, making sure that our community and workforce are finding housing resources. So I'll end on, again, water conservation and fire preparedness. Let's all put our heads together and work together, and we'll get through that together. And so with that, I will then move into our proclamations and presentations. And we're going to begin with our PG&E gas main project presentation. This is Brian Garber, I believe, is going to be, or I believe Mark Van Gorder, and we have about a 10-minute presentation from Mr. Van Gorder.
Good evening, Mayor. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
And I see the presentation. Cindy, are you putting that up? Are you going to run this, or did you want me to? Or
You just let me know when to advance the slide.
okay, can we do a sound check for Brian Garber?
Yeah, hi, this is Brian Garber. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, we hear you, Brian. So thank you, Mayor, council members, and Manager Presswich. Also want to thank Cindy for helping us get this presentation up and running. We were a little Zoom challenged for a bit, but I think we're ready to start. We heard you, Mayor, that you want to keep this very tight to 10 minutes, and I imagine possibly some questions from council. So Brian Garber is our project manager, and he'll be walking us through this presentation. Also on the phone, if I can do a quick sound check, is our customer outreach specialist, Michele Williams. Michele, are you able to comment or talk?
Yes.
Terrific.
Can you hear me?
So,
okay.
I hear you loud and clear. So Brian's gonna kick this off, move quickly through some slides. So there are a number of slides. He's gonna pause and talk a little bit longer on some. The slides are here for reference. The deck was sent to the clerk and available for the public. So Brian, why don't you go ahead and get started? Oh, and I will quickly apologize that we have spelled out St. Helena to Calistoga. We know that it is ST period. So go ahead, Brian.
Good evening, folks. PG&E is working on upgrading and testing the gas transmission and distribution system throughout the Napa Valley. This is year 2 of the project, and through St. Helena, we'll be doing some pipe replacement in order to complete a strength test of the pipelines within the city. And I'll get to exact locations here pretty quickly. Further north, from Pratt Avenue all the way to Dunawheel Lane, we will be replacing and testing additional pipe. But I wanted to focus tonight on what was going to happen inside the city of St. Helena. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We're going to shorten this up and provide these to you as a reference. Pretty much I've already talked about most of this here. You can go on to the next slide. So the reasons for these projects are safety first. These pipelines were installed in the 1930s. They haven't been tested. Some of them we know are at the limit of their age. And so we're going to replace as much as we can. We've been working with the vineyard owners and numerous property owners to gain rights to do that. The start date for our project is contingent upon our Caltrans permit. Right now, that is September 1st, and we'll keep you abreast of any changes to that schedule. Cindy, if you want to move on to the next slide. And again, this is just a slide detailing out what a strength test is. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to isolate the line from the system. We're going to fill it full of water. We're going to pressurize that water up to what we call the maximum allowable pressure for that pipe. And then if the pipe doesn't leak or doesn't fail, we'll remove the water, dry it out, dry the pipeline out, and return it to service. Go ahead, Cindy, move on to the next one, please. These are just some slides showing what to expect to see along the road. We're planning to do all this work at night based on comments that we got from the city of St. Helena and from Caltrans. So during the day, all the excavations will be plated. There will be no disruption to traffic. We will have one section of a sidewalk closed at the corner of Mitchell and Highway 29, 24 hours a day. And we're providing the city with a pedestrian traffic control plan in order to get people around that. So there's no disruption for the students or the public. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. This slide is just kind of a review of what the entire project is. And you can see it runs on the north. This is the replacement section. It runs from Pratt up to Madrigal Lane. This is going to be the most highly impactful to the entire community. It's a linear project. There will be traffic control at night. During the day, all lanes will be open. You will see piles of dirt and the trenches that we dig in the road will be plated. I'm sure there's a whole lot of questions that we'll get from this project. Cindy, go ahead and move on. So these are the strength tests. 1448B is at the very north end of the valley. We call it T1448B, and it's from basically Madrigal Winery, to Dunawheel Lane. And this is going to be similar to what happens in St. Helena. There will be a series of 10 by 10, 10 by 15 foot excavations at specific locations where we have to isolate the pipeline from the system, and where we do our where we'll fill the pipe with water and run the test. Next slide, please. And T1448A. Now, this is the project that we'll be doing in St. Helena, and I'll get into some detail here, but same kind of idea. We're going to install a new pipe underneath Sulphur Creek between the corner of Mitchell Lane and across the street from Gott's. And that'll be the most disruptive portion of it. There'll also be excavations, 2 or 3 other excavations along Highway 29. The other major impacted area will be at the corner of Pratt and Highway 29. Our biggest concern, of course, working at night is going to be noise. We've got a permit application into the police chief as of last week. And I think he's just waiting to hear if there were any negative comments about this work before issuing the permit. Go ahead, Cindy, to the next. So here we get into exactly what's going to happen in St. Helena. So you can see where it shows a 1,000-foot fabrication area on the right-hand side of the slide. We're going to drill a hole using horizontal directional drill from the corner of Mitchell and Highway 29 to across the street from Gott's. And on the left-hand side, you'll see a note that says pullback bell hole. So we're going to fabricate the pipe along the side of the road, 1,000 feet of it. And when it comes time to do that, we're going to roll the pipe down the street and attach it to a drill stem. We're going to pull it back through the hole, and that'll complete the installation. Right now, we're looking at putting a staging laydown yard for the entire project. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the street, but it's across from the high school there. and it's denoted as the purple box. Cindy, if you want to go to the next slide, please. This is our most impactful area. This is the corner of Mitchell and Highway 29. There is a regulation station denoted by the little yellow valves on the left-hand side of the screen. And the larger purple box will be the area where our drill rig sits. And the blue line represents the new pipeline that we're going to drill under the creek. And again, that's using horizontal directional drilling. We typically have been using 1301 as a Mitchell Lane as a laydown area. And we are intending on using that as a backup injection spot. So when we isolate the pipeline, there'll be no natural gas coming into St. Helena unless we manually inject it into the system. And that's one of the spots where we'll be injecting natural gas to feed the city, so the customers have natural gas during the testing period. We are working with Sunshine Markets and Wells Fargo, getting land agreements. We are aware that the city has a cityscape project coming online, and we're trying to coordinate our restoration and timing with that project. So that's basically a synopsis of what's going to go on at Mitchell and Highway 29. Next slide, please, Cindy. All right, the remaining work is going to be at Madrona, the intersection of Madrona and Highway 29, and Elmhurst and Highway 29, and Pratt Avenue and Highway 29. Those locations at Madrona and Elmhurst will be 10 by 10 bell holes. And that work will be intermittent, meaning that we will excavate, isolate the line, plate those up, do our test, and then go back at the end of the test and hook it back up to the system and fill the holes and pave. The workspace at Pratt Avenue is a test head. You'll see water tanks down there, compressor, light stands, porta potties, and a excavation that's probably about 15 by 10 feet in the sidewalk there. Michele, I'll turn this over to you. I don't think we have much time left. Michele wants to talk to you about customer care items, customer notification, customer outreach. Michele? Cindy, you can go to the next slide.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yep.
Okay, so as far as customer outreach, we will be having letters that will go out, IVRs. We have possibly a open house, depending on how COVID goes. I'll also do canvassing, which will be going directly to the neighborhoods. We'll reach out again to all of the customers, the businesses. They'll have direct contact information for me. I'll just be here to answer any questions. I'll also provide my email address. So those are some of the things that we'll do to make sure that all the customers and the businesses are aware in the area.
Thank you.
And really quickly, the IVR, that's an automated phone message.
Okay, thank you. I'm assuming there'll be a few council questions here. I have just a few, and then I'll open it up. In terms of timeline, what are we looking at in terms of dates?
Once we start, which is currently slated for September 1st, the worst case scenario would be 90 days. We're hoping for much shorter.
Okay, and then the work will be done at night and staged off of the main strip. A question I had in terms of, as you said, laying the pipe in, would that all be happening at night? And so during the day, that pipe would not be staged along the road. Is that correct?
That pipe will be staged off the road between the railroad tracks, the grassy strip between the tracks and the highway. It's an
Okay.
8-inch diameter pipe.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other council questions at this point? As we go forward, I know questions will come up. I'm seeing Councilmember Hall and then Councilmember Chateau.
Anna, would you like to start?
Oh, sure, thanks. I just have a quick question. It was about noise. When you say it's going to be noisy at night, what kind of noise are we talking about?
Well, the loudest piece of equipment we'll be using, because we're digging on live gas lines, will be a hydrovac machine, which is basically a truck that squirts water at a high pressure into the soil. And then we have a vacuum component to that truck that'll suck the soil and water out. The remainder of it would be backhoes, pickup trucks, light stands, normal construction equipment.
And then this goes on all night?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm seeing Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. What hours will the work begin? What is nighttime?
Well, so Caltrans technically, I believe, has control of the highway, and their work hours on past projects that we've done in the area have been 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. Sunday night through Thursday.
Okay. And will there be any anticipated impact to travel up and down 29 during those work hours? Will you need one lane block?
North of St. Helena, north of Pratt Avenue, and actually north of Markham Wineries, there will be one lane traffic at various locations. Within the city, on the south end, there will be one lane traffic at night flagged. And then when we have excavations open, I'm not sure if I think we're able to get 2 lanes by through the northern end of town, north of downtown, Madrona and Elmhurst.
Okay. You mentioned you need to shut off gas when you're testing. Will there be any customer service interruptions in gas service?
No, sir. We will use a series of bypasses to get around where we cut the pipe, and we will be injecting natural gas from Mitchell Lane to serve the city. North of the city, we have at the corner of Dunawheel and Highway 29, an acre and a half of land where we will support the entire valley from that location.
Great, thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Any additional council questions, comments? Seeing none, I will say, this is a challenging project, challenging to bring into the town, but necessary infrastructure work. I will say that our communication with PG&E over the last number of years has gotten better and better. And I anticipate as we move into this, continuing dialogue to minimize impacts as much as we can. And certainly in the last few years working with PG&E, we've developed the dialogue where we're communicating in a sense in real time to get them so we all understand the impacts and how to minimize. So with that, I'll say thank you to PG&E.
Just one question I was thinking about, Mayor, if I may interrupt for a second. Will PG&E be brand new overlaying all the areas that are disturbed?
Yes, sir. We will restore, according to to Caltrans standards, typical T-cut 2-inch grind and overlay. We
Will
are
that
working.
be just limited to the areas of cut, or will it be an extensive overlay?
Typically, it's going to be full lane width, some distance around the area that we've worked.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm certain there'll be continued dialogue and interface between PG&E and our public works and our city administration to look for not just ways to minimize impacts, but also how to sort of find synergies in the work we're doing also with the streetscape. So as big a challenge as this is, there are certainly opportunities within it, and also strengthening our infrastructure for the future. So there are many benefits to moving forward with this kind of project. Mr. Van Gorder, any last comments before we check off here?
No, I will say thank you to the staff. They have been very helpful in working with us in planning this as best as possible. We will continue the open dialogue. I know that's the direct line to Brian and Michele as well. I will say that I know that there are other council questions about other issues that we will continue to dialogue about over the coming months.
Very good. Thank you. We appreciate you being here, and thanks to your team. So
thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our proclamations. We have 2 proclamations. They'll be a bit truncated this evening. I see somebody is with the Bicycle Coalition is here, I believe, to receive the bicycle proclamation. And so I will begin with that. And is Carlota is on, am I seeing?
I just promoted her to a panelist.
Great, and I'll read the proclamation. Perfect. I'll do sort of a truncated version, and if she has a few words to add, that would be great. So this is the City of St. Helena proclamation declaring May as Bike Month and Friday, May 21st, 2021 as Bike to Wherever Day, 2021. Whereas the City of St. Helena recognizes that bicycling is a healthy, convenient, and environmentally sustainable form of transportation for residents and visitors, and is a fun and accessible recreational activity for kids and adults to get outside and explore the incredible beauty of the Napa Valley. And whereas the City of St. Helena is committed to implementing the adopted 2019 bicycle plan, reaching the goal of 10% of all trips by bicycle by the year 2035, and making our streets and roadways safe for bicyclists of all ages and abilities. And whereas throughout the month of May, residents and visitors throughout the Napa Valley will experience the simple joy of riding a bicycle through free events and programs, including family biking workshops, helmet giveaways, valet bike parking, community rides, or simply by pumping up their tires and going for a ride. And whereas the City of St. Helena encourages everyone to participate in Bike to Wherever Day on Friday, May 21st, 2021, and to pledge to ride their bicycle for short trips at least once a week throughout the month of May 2021. And now therefore be it resolved that I, Jeff Ellsworth, Mayor of the City of St. Helena, along with my fellow council members, do hereby proclaim the month of May as Bike Month and Friday, May 21st, 2021 as Bike to Wherever Day in the City of St. Helena. And Carlota, do you have a few thoughts here?
Yes, thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. So I'm Carlota Sainato, Program Coordinator with the Napa County Bicycle Coalition. I will be brief because I know we're got a lot on the agenda tonight. So I just want to say thank you to the City Council for recognizing Bike Month and Bike to Wherever Day through this proclamation. We really appreciate the city's continued support for safer and more accessible biking in St. Helena. We enjoy working with city staff on the several projects, programs, and partnerships that have been moving us towards this goal. As mentioned in the proclamation, there are many benefits to biking for transportation and recreation towards sustainability and health. And those benefits really help move St. Helena towards the broad city goals and council mission regarding sustainability, public health, and safety and well-being for families and youth in the community. I can say on a personal level, I grew up in St. Helena, and being able to ride my bike all around town was one of the things that made growing up in St. Helena feel very special. Month, as you mentioned, we have our Pledge to Ride, which is a really great opportunity to get rolling during the month of May. We have resources on our Bike Month page like family and beginner friendly bike routes, which will be up May 1st, and some short, safe biking videos. We have our family biking workshop at Crane Park on May 1st, Saturday, and we still have some space open for that, so registration is still open. And we have Bike to Wherever Day on Friday, May 21st, and we will have bike in, swag bag, pickup locations at St. Helena Parks and Recreation and St. Helena Cyclery. So we encourage folks to get on their bikes and go pick up some swag bags. Whether you're a new or experienced rider, we invite you to celebrate Bike Month. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks for being here and being a part of this proclamation. Very much appreciated. So now we'll move to item 7.3. This is another proclamation. May is Monarch and Pollinator Conservation Month. This is a proclamation presented to Erin Arnsteen from the Western Monarch Society of Napa County. The monarch, there has been a significant decline in its population since the 1980s. It's an indicator species. And the proclamation is to promote pollinators and awareness of the circumstance with the monarch butterfly. Is Ms. Arnsteen available to accept this proclamation?
Yes, I am.
Very good. Oh, okay, wonderful. So I'm going to read a somewhat truncated version, but then I will pass it to you for a few words.
Great, thank you.
So this is the City of St. Helena proclamation declaring Monarch and Pollinator Awareness Month, May 2021. Whereas more than 85% of flowering plants on Earth, including wild and cultivated species, require the assistance of animal pollinators in order to produce seeds, and whereas pollinators play a vital role in maintaining a healthy ecosystem, local plant species, wildlife, and urban agriculture all depend on pollination from bees, butterflies, and other animals. And whereas globally, pollinators are in great decline due to pressures including habitat loss, climate change, increased use of pesticides, and whereas the Western monarch butterfly is an iconic North American species whose multi-generational migration and metamorphosis from caterpillar to butterfly has captured the imagination of millions of Americans, and whereas the Western monarch butterfly population has been reduced by 99.9% since the 1980s, with only less than 2,000 migratory Western monarch butterflies counted in 2021. And whereas the United States Department of Agriculture and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service have declared the monarch to be a priority species for conservation because healthy monarch habitat benefits a wide variety of other species. Whereas on May 18, 2021, Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Jeff Ellsworth, Mayor of St. Helena, and the City Council members of the City of St. Helena do hereby proclaim the month of May as Monarch and Pollinator Awareness Month in the City of St. Helena, and encourages all residents to participate in community activities that support and celebrate monarch and pollinator protection and conservation, especially planting native milkweed and other native nectar flowers in pesticide-free zones on their properties. Thank you. And Ms. Arnsteen, do you have a few words for us?
I do. Thank you so much. So thank you, Mayor Ellsworth, City Council members, and Cindy, our wonderful City Clerk. So I'm Erin Arnsteen. I'm the founder of the Western Monarch Society of Napa County. And I'm honored to be here representing my fellow co-founders, Jess Arnsteen, David Garden Jr., and Allison Rodriguez. So our main goal is to rebuild habitat for native pollinators with a special focus on the Western monarch butterfly. And having municipal support by our city recognizing the importance of pollinators and the dire state of the Western monarch butterfly is a really huge step in helping us with some of the bigger underlying issues pollinators face, such as habitat loss and pesticide use. So thank you so much for your support. And it also gives us a great platform to raise awareness in multiple fun ways in the community. So I'm really excited to share some of the recent work that our group has been doing and some upcoming things that are happening in St. Helena. So in the month of May, the Western Monarch Society will be giving away thousands of native milkweed plants to our community members and a few nectar plants as well for free. So we're just giving them out for free to rebuild some habitat. So you can find us at the St. Helena Farmers Market every Friday in May, starting on May 7th. And just come see us and we'll get you hooked up with some plants. And we're also working on educating local nurseries about carrying more pesticide-free and drought-tolerant native plants. And we've partnered with some local landowners and wineries, including Longmeadow Ranch, Cliff Family Farm, Ragushi Ranch and Winery, Charles Krug, and Rancho Otranto on various pollinator plant projects. So we thank them for their support. And we look forward to working with other organizations such as the Native Plant Society, the Napa RCD, the Land Trust, and the Master Gardeners. So in addition to the work that we're doing with the Western Monarch Society, there are some really great things happening in the community. So the community members have really rallied together. And so to name a few thus far, the St. Helena Farmers Market is making their market classrooms theme for the month of May, all things pollinators. And they will be partnering with Nimbus Arts in May and some local children on creating these really great little monarch pins that people can go to the farmer's market, pick up a kit, decorate, and then wear around town to show their support. Then you can also visit nimbusarts.org. They're doing a lot of great community pollinator art theme projects, including a lecture by Jane Kim. She's a conservation muralist and artist who did the giant butterfly paintings in San Francisco in the Tenderloin district. And then they're also doing really great pollinator themed community art projects and plant giveaways themselves. And then Cameo Cinema is developing a Memorial Day weekend pollinator documentary screening with some educational elements and pollinator art and science activities. So stay tuned to their website as well. So all these are really great and wonderful things that the community has banded together to do in honor of pollinators, but really the most important thing that we can do is plant host plants, so planting the native milkweed and planting nectar plants. And so visit us at the farmers market on Fridays in May. You can bike there and come visit us every Friday. So kind of combine forces with the bicyclists. Thank you so much. If you have any or if you want any more information, you can email us at westernmonarchsociety@gmail.com and we can answer any of your questions about plants and insects and pollinators.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move from our proclamations and we will move into our staff briefings. Our monthly water update, we'll be talking about water when we get to our water items coming up, so we'll circle back to that. We now have a city manager COVID update.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Just a moment. Sorry, I was trying to be a little fancier and move it to a different location. So we're going to go back to the traditional spot. Okay, so this is a look at California today, and we're continuing to make much better progress on reducing the transmission, the number of cases statewide. Napa County is in the moderate tier, and we are meeting metrics for 2 of the 3 criteria to move to the minimal category. And what we need to do is reduce the caseload from 4.6 per 100,000, which is an adjusted case rate, to 2% or lower. And so good progress there. Statewide, the state is looking to move from this these tier systems in mid-June. which will be a reopening statewide. There will continue to be various protocols in place, and that's going to be dependent on the continued vaccination of all Californians. The goal is to reach 20 million vaccination, 20 million people by mid-June, and keep hospitalization rates low as well. So really celebrate the continued progress, continue to social distance and adhere to CDC regulations. Those continue to adjust, and there were some adjustments announced today by the federal government related to outdoor masking for people that have received both doses of vaccination. So happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions from council on the COVID? I'm seeing Council Member Hardy.
Mayor Ellsworth, I've been reading in various sources reports of reduced rate of vaccination and some concerns about that. Is that reflected in the Napa County data?
I am not aware that it is. Napa County has had a fairly good track record of being having higher vaccination rates and an early leader statewide. So I'm not aware of any concerns locally. There are reports, as you stated, of reduced demand for vaccination. And so our continued work across the county to raise awareness of the opportunities that exist through individual hospitals or other locations for vaccinations is part of our continued messaging countywide. The state website, covid19.ca.gov, continues to provide resources for people to connect to vaccination opportunities, and that can be found on the state website as well.
Thank you.
Additional council questions or comments? I wanted to just mention a few things. We've been really fortunate with great partnerships with the county, Adventist Health, and getting the vaccine really put out there. Our city staff, our fire and police have participated in this partnership and just done a remarkable job that really is recognized throughout the county that this has been a model that's a benefit to everybody. In checking with Adventist Health, they're continuing outreach in the community to find folks who may be looking to be vaccinated. So they're being proactive with that as well. I want to recognize that we continue meeting every week on Monday with a group with the mayors of the local jurisdictions, the city managers, the board chair of the supervisors, and the county CEO to make sure we're in front of COVID issues as they come up. So that's a weekly meeting. We are also moving into an economic recovery task force that's meeting regularly. We want to make sure that our businesses feel supported, sort of given the opportunity to catch up to some degree. So we want to look at what measures we can continue to make sure that our downtown businesses are supported and everybody has the opportunity to look at how to sort of see this recovery period as a place to not just get back to stability, but to begin thriving again. So those meetings continue. I want to recognize the staff for the great work in the Moneyway pop-up park, all the great input from council and the community. We have Telegraph Alley now with seating and the pop-up park on Money Way that I think will begin a discussion for more opportunities on Money Way. So we just want to put out gratitude for the council and staff for making that happen. And so with that, we'll just keep moving forward. And if issues come up related to COVID, once again, whether it's health or financial aspects, housing, all these things that are a sort of a ripple effect, please reach out to the city, reach out to the county, and there are resources to help everybody keep pulling forward. So thank you. Okay. Oh, I'm seeing Councilmember Chateau.
Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth. While you were speaking, I just had one more question. Are there Up Valley clinics still happening for vaccinations? So people that haven't gotten them 16 years older and can still go to the Up Valley location? And how do we know about that when they're happening?
That's my understanding, and I can check in with the hospital to make sure that they're putting that messaging out for what the next stages of this look like. But they, to my understanding, next week do have some plans.
And there are no vaccinations planned this week, no second doses. But yes, as they plan additional vaccinations, and again, some of the supply changes from time to time, from week to week. We have connected with Adventist Health, and when they need assistance in messaging, we've asked for the opportunity to share that with the community as well, to augment their messaging.
Thank you.
Very good. If there are no other questions or comments regarding COVID, we'll move now to our consent calendar. And this is where members of the council or public may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of considering alternative action, for extended discussion, or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions with a roll call vote. And so I'll move through the numbers. If anybody wants to pull one of them, I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy with a hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth. I'd like to pull 9.8 and 9.10, please.
Okay, 9.8. And 9.10, okay. Any other, I'll just read through, see if a hand comes up. 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, 9.4, 9.5, 9.6, 9.7, 9.9. So seeing no others pulled, is there a motion to pull to pass the consent calendar with the exception of 9.8 and 9.10?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
And a roll call, please.
Councilmember Chateau,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Councilmember Hardy,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. So we'll move now to item 9.8. Councilmember Hardy, do you have some comment here?
I do. Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth. I was looking at the scope of work. I see a lot of very important tasks in this contract, but there's no way from the contract that I can really tell what the timeline is or really what the deliverables are. It's a bit hard to make out which of these tasks will result in some report or other deliverable by the consultant versus those that are more collaborative, where perhaps it will be the city staff that delivers the end product. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to suggest that perhaps the city manager can work with the consultant and staff on developing a timeline for each task so that in subsequent reports to the council, we have some idea where we are, and it might also be helpful since I believe the billing will call out the tasks. That would be a standard way of billing on a contract like this. We should be able to keep track of the expenditures in relation to each task while we look at the progress. So that was my comment. I have no concerns about the contract itself. I just want to be sure we have some good tools for tracking our progress moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm looking at the city manager. Does that look like something we can build into as we go?
I think that's a very good recommendation, and I'll work with Mr. O'Connor to develop some form of a tracking system, and then perhaps a quarterly update to the council on the financial side of this as well.
Very good. Thank you. So with that, and I'll open it to public comment as well. to see if there's public comment on this item. Cindy or Cami, are we seeing any?
I'm not seeing any public comment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the council, and if there's no further comment or question, I'll ask for a motion on item 9.8.
Excellent comments, Councilmember Hardy. I'll move the item.
I'll second it.
And a roll call, please.
Vice Chair Doring,
Yes.
Councilor Chateau,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. And now we'll move to item 9.10. This is consideration and proposed adoption of a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services agreement with Interwest for Hunter Subdivision Planning Contract Staff Services for a total contract amount not to exceed $150,000. And I'll go back to Councilmember Hardy for comment or question on this item.
Thank you. Actually, I asked for this to be pulled in response to a request we received in writing from John Milliken, who asked that it be removed from consent. I don't know whether Mr. Milliken is here to comment or not, but I have no other comment myself. This was a courtesy response to a request from the public.
Okay, so with that, unless I'm seeing other council comment or question, I'll open it to public comment to see if Mr. Milliken is on to put forth his comment or question.
He is not in attendance and I see no hands raised.
Okay, so with that, I'll bring it back to the council. Councilmember Hardy, so there was no indication in the request of what the question was?
Well, we've received a number of comment letters, at least two that come immediately to mind in recent days on this item. Mr. Milliken is, I believe, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think most of the comments related to concerns about his inability to get certain questions answered from staff, and is very much concerned, I think, about transparency, but also, and I'm, recollecting a number of comments that he's made over time on this project. I'm not sure that Mr. Milliken thinks it's even appropriate for the city to continue to work on it. So that was the gist of that. There are some other comments that suggested to me that there may be some misunderstanding among members of the public as to the nature of the EIR process, which is designed as a process to inform the public and the council. It takes a long time often to get to the point of publishing a draft so that all of that information is in public view and out for comment. But in some, I think that's a good part of the work that's ahead of us. And I don't think we can use the CEQA process to inform people until we actually have a draft to publish. Those are all of my thoughts on that.
Okay, thank you. And I'm seeing Vice Mayor Doring.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So the public comment from Mr. Milliken is published on our agenda on our website. I do want to note that Planning Director DeRosa has responded to those comments. I saw an email go out. I assume it went out a couple hours ago, responding to most of the questions that were raised by Mr. Milliken, and maybe that is the reason he's not here, but I think his questions have been answered. So just would put that out there. Thanks.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And Ms. DeRosa, thank you for being on. And do you have any comments regarding where things are with this item from the questions that came in?
No, and I've reached out to Mr. Milliken in the past when he's had trouble finding information on the website. And we actually just have an updated issues letter that we just posted in the last couple of weeks that was in that link that I sent to him. So I encourage him to reach out to me directly if he wants to know the status. And I assume here, probably by summer, we'll be having a public hearing item on this for the Planning Commission with the EIR. And as soon as I know more about the schedule, I'll definitely update the council and the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So with that, is there any other council comment or question or a motion to move this forward?
I will move approval of agenda item 9.10.
Second that.
And a roll call, please.
Councilmember Hardy,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Chateau,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Thank you. We'll now move, as we heard earlier from our city clerk, we're going to be going into item 12.1, new business ahead of item 10.1. So we'll get into 12.1. This is consideration of adoption of an urgency ordinance amending chapter 13.04 of the municipal code to address the criteria for initiating phased water regulations and the conservation measures for commercial, industrial, and institutional users. And this is prepared by our city attorney, Mr. Walsh, Ethan Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll introduce this item and then I will turn it over to Council Member Hardy, actually, as he was integral in putting this together.
Sorry, excuse me.
I'm sorry, seeing Councilmember Chateau.
Thank you so much. Just these two agenda items go hand in hand. So I'm going to recuse myself since my husband works at Hall and our decision on the penalty structure could have a material financial impact. So this is my point to say good night. Nice to see all of you.
Thank you. Thank you for being on the meeting. Okay, we'll move back into 12.1 and Mr. Walsh.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So as I was saying, I will quickly introduce this item and then turn it over to Councilmember Hardy for any comments that he has, and then you can open it up for questions for staff. So at our last meeting, we were discussing the proposed penalty structure for violations of the allocations that may occur during the phase 2 water emergency. And during that discussion, the council had concerns over kind of the structure of in our existing ordinance as to how those allocations are determined. As you know, in the current ordinance, they are based on a 10% reduction in phase 2 and a 20% reduction in phase 3 over the average water usage over the 4 winter months from the preceding non-shortage water year. And there was concerns that would have kind of a disproportionate impact on businesses that had kind of seasonal water uses. And we talked about wineries in particular as an industry where most of the water usage happens outside of those 4 months. And so it kind of disproportionately results in a more severe reduction in their water usage during the summer and early fall. So in light of that, Councilmember Hardy suggested that he may have some amendments to our existing code language that would help to address this and come up with a more equitable structure for dealing with kind of the division of the allocation amongst different users in the non-residential categories. And so Councilmember Hardy proposed some language, and I worked with him and Dr. Mitz, our finance director, to put together the ordinance language that's before you this evening. And essentially the way that it's structured is to have a 10% reduction over the average from the preceding 3 non-shortage years for the same billing period. So for example, in the allocation for August of 2021 would be 10% below the average allocation for August from the preceding 3 non-shortage years, which we're determining to be 2017, 2018, and 2019. So you would take the average from August for those 3 years, reduce it by 10%, and for the commercial, industrial, and institutional uses, that would be their allocation for that August. And that is we structured it to be for the allocations to be calculated that way, both for phases 2 and phase 3. At phase 2, it's 10%, and phase 3, it's 20%. The other change that Councilmember Hardy suggested was changing the determination as to the need for the water emergency not to be based on the amount of water that is needed up and through the next November, but instead base it on the next May. His thinking, which he can elaborate on probably more articulately than I can, but it was based on the thought that with the low rainfall that we have had kind of in recent years, we should not be assuming that that in November we are going to have a new significant rainfall that will alleviate our wattage shortage issues. We should factor the possibility of low rainfall into our calculations as we're determining whether or not we are in a phase 2 or phase 3 emergency. So we also made amendments to the language to that effect. That's a basic summary of the language we came up with. As you know, the goal is to have this ordinance take effect immediately, and as such, it's structured as an urgency ordinance. In order for an urgency ordinance to pass and take effect immediately, it has to pass by a 4/5 vote. And with Councilmember Chateau's recusal, that would require a unanimous vote of the remaining council members. With that, I'm happy to take any questions that the council may have or turn it over to Councilmember Hardy to elaborate on his concept.
Are there any other council questions at this point before I ask Councilmember Hardy to walk us through this approach? I'm seeing none. So Councilmember Hardy, if you would take us into this and give us a summary, please, of your approach on this item.
Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth, and thank you, Mr. Walsh. A couple of things. First, it became very clear to me when I learned of winery comments on the existing structure that there was a serious problem there because of the seasonal use of water at wineries, which really is determined by the harvest season, with typical winery using having 50% of its total demand for water for the year comes in just 4 months in the harvest season, and thus the remaining 8 months of the year the demand is the other 50%. And looking at the way our current ordinance is structured, the result is if you assume that the 8-month period that's not harvest, that the water use is essentially the same, then what that means is taking the average of the 4 winter months and applying it to a winery during harvest, and the winery gets less than 50% of the water it would ordinarily use at harvest. So instead of a 10% cutback, you get something like a 55% cutback using the formula that we had. And it seemed to me very clear that this was a mistake. The 4 winter month period is one that's used in many places as a good way to calculate indoor water use by residents in a home, because you're not irrigating. And so, for example, here in St. Helena, we use that period to set sewer fees for our residents so that we're not basing a sewer fee on water that's going out to irrigate the landscaping. And I assume, without knowing, I did look up the ordinance that enacted this, but I didn't find any recitals that enlightened me really as to the thinking there. But I assume that the thought was that they would be structuring it so that commercial users received, water allocation that was based on their indoor water use, and that they would cut back 10% from that. Well, again, it's a formula that just doesn't work for businesses whose use is seasonal. I suspect to some extent that is more than just the winery category, although the winery category may be the most unusual in terms of the concentration of demand in a short period. I believe lots of our businesses are seasonal, just as visitor traffic is seasonal. So at least to some extent. So the change I proposed simply has the 10% reduction track with the billing period, so that we eliminate any problem for businesses whose water use varies on a seasonal basis. And that was a simple change to draft. There was some additional feedback from winery customers that brought to our attention the fact that harvests do vary significantly sometimes in the quantity of grapes that come in and other factors. So that led to the 3-year average. That makes a lot of sense to me, and I think that is the most equitable way to proceed, and probably the most effective in terms of conservation, really, because if we pick, if the preceding year is an unusually large harvest, then it might really limit the conservation effect to use only the 1 year. So the other significant item of change, yes.
Councilmember Hardy, I'm seeing Vice Mayor Doring's hand up. I don't know if he had a question on the
No, I'll
last
wait.
section.
I'll wait for your
Okay.
presentation to be completed. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So the other major change is with the sort of date that we use to determine whether or not we're going from phase 1 to phase 2 or from phase 2 to phase 3. And that's, determined by asking the question, how much water do we have on November 1? And do we have enough? And that seemed to me to suggest that our ordinance assumed that the rains would come. And that really simply doesn't make sense to me. I do think we need to make these decisions looking through the next rainy season, and with staff ideally making projections that show the council the effect in terms of what we have in total supply May 1st after the rainy season, looking at several different rainfall patterns. So the proposal I made to staff, I think will be reflected in some information we get, I don't know if it's tonight or later, was that we look at a very low rainfall year, a low rainfall year, and then 90% of our historic average. One of my concerns is that with climate change, our long-term historic average is not likely to be our future average. So I'm trying to encourage the council to think about policies that take at least an initial stab at accounting for climate change when we're projecting rainfall for purposes of managing our water supply. But again, the key for me, and it's the one piece of this that's reflected in the text, is we're going from a November 1 horizon date for our projections to a May 1 horizon date, so that we're thinking about what happens if the next winter is a low rainfall winter. And that's what it's about. So I'll be quiet and listen.
Thank you, Councilmember Hardy. I'm seeing Vice Mayor Doring.
Councilmember Hardy, thank you for taking on this task and for the excellent work. I am very supportive of using the 3-year average. I think that makes sense to me. I'm supportive of not using the November date as a determination date, but going back to May. I think that makes good sense given what you've laid out. I'm extremely sympathetic to the fairness issue with respect to using the 10% reduction of the 4-month winter average. I think that is inherently unfair, particularly to the wine industry. But my question is how did you land on the 10% reduction when you have acknowledged that under the current scenario that we had, it would be a 55% cutback? Yeah, and I'd ask that question relative to residents and their likely more than 30% reduction requirement. I'm not sure how you got to the 10% when you compare it to residents.
Understood. And again, this really was based on my personal assessment of how we got presented with an ordinance that basically couldn't work for our biggest water users. 55–60% cutback at harvest simply doesn't make any sense. So I started off by assuming, I believe this is correct, that no one intended to cut commercial users back in that extreme a fashion. I think the text that we have that I'm proposing to amend is a mistake in that regard. So I thought about that, and it looked to me as though what was intended, and again, I'm connecting dots without the benefit of recitals or any other contemporaneous text to guide me, but it does appear to me that what was intended was to have commercial users reduce their indoor use by 10%. And so I didn't have any basis then for changing the 10% number in the mode of simply correcting a mistake. Excuse me. I do recognize that with our residential customers, who a significant percentage of the total water that's used in a normal year is used to irrigate landscaping. And thus our basic phase 2 regulation by greatly limiting what can be used outside does result in a much bigger total reduction in residential use than 10%. I believe I've heard it 30%. I'm not sure if that's just a round number, if it's a little more or less. It might even be just a bit more. So in terms of total reduction, we're not asking or requiring the same thing from residential users as we are from commercial users. And I think of that as really the structure that we've inherited. And I expect that we will want to think about that and discuss that as we move on. But you know, as soon as we dig deeper into that, I think we end up with a multitude of questions to ask and answer. So perhaps as much as anything, I was simply not ambitious enough or too timid to completely reorganize the approach.
Thank you, Councilmember Hardy. And I'm going to see Councilmember Hall has now got his hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, Vice Mayor, it looked like you had a follow-up or? Okay. Thank you, Member Hardy. Really appreciate all the work. I was just thinking, I think it's very helpful that we look at the change in the date from November 1 to May 1. First of all, I wholeheartedly agree with the 3-year average on these numbers, looking month by month. I think it's just more common sense, easier to understand for everybody in the community. I'd like to see the same thing with the date that we are selecting by effectively not choosing a date. And by that, I mean, we need to look at our water supply like any other asset that we're managing. Dr. Mitz does a great job with financial forecasts, keeping us all apprised of what our account balances look like down the road. And we should be doing the same with our water. So I don't know the process for doing this, but instead of selecting May 1, which I inherently agree, Member Hardy is significantly better than selecting November 1, I would suggest we just say at any time there's a projected imbalance between supply and demand anytime in the next year. So we just keep a year forecast out ahead of us. Every month we produce a water report. It's coupled with a forecast or just a thumbs up, thumbs down on the forecast that we're still good to go on our forecasts with regard to our supply and demand balances. That way it's easier for the community to understand. It's easier to monitor. If we're going to be running forecasts all the time anyway, let's just pick one that keeps that issue out ahead of us. If at any point there's a imbalance, it should trigger an action by this council or by staff to get in front of the council, and would trigger just as we got it laid out right now in the ordinance. So I would look at municipal code, those sections that we're just reviewing tonight, sections 2, paragraph 3, section 3, paragraph 1, section 5, paragraph 1, to just replace May 1 as a firm date with basically a rolling period in front of us, if there's a way we can craft language to do that.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. I want to just check in with Dr. Mitz here on that concept. How does that look to the finance department in terms of being able to manage something like that as opposed to the May 1st date?
On the rolling, I would actually defer to either Public Works or the city manager, since that would be a function of that department, not the financial side.
I could comment on that. I think a 12-month number or date is a good number to use. And frankly, I'm looking at some modeling we've done, and it may be helpful for us to, so for example, right now, if we take 12 months out, we've modeled this through June of 2022. And when we model implementation of this urgency ordinance, we remain in a phase 2 emergency. But it would be helpful for me to know, to have our staff model in the context of this date right now in April, to model through the following November. It doesn't need to be necessarily in the code, but I think it's going to be important for us to model this out to the end of that second dry summer season, so that we understand what's happening with the reservoir. And if there's a concern over supply, we'll have an earlier read on needing to adjust either demand or looking for additional sources. So that's my only comment. It may be good to have a business practice of looking out even farther than 12 months.
Councilmember Hardy, what are your thoughts on how that might lay in with what you've proposed?
Well, my inclination, given at least my sense of the importance of getting to the next step in phase 2 with a sort of clear set of policies in this part of the ordinance. My inclination is to suggest that we adopt the ordinance that's in front of us and then follow up on Councilmember Hall's excellent suggestion in terms of, and I think, reflected in our city manager's response, that, we look to longer term forecasting as a tool just to keep us up to date. I think, the way our whole ordinance and policy package is structured right now, if we shift to a rolling average, we also have to think about how we quantify or adjust the way in which we quantify the degree of imbalance that triggers phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. I mean, there's really more work to be done no matter what. I think in order to get all of these tools the way we're going to need them to be moving forward. But I don't think we have to do it all tonight. I really don't. I'll put it differently. We can't do it all tonight. And so I think some of it, is really a work in process. That's my initial thought. But I don't, so long as it's clear what it is we're deciding based on the rolling average and how we're reaching the conclusion, then I don't have any fundamental problem with that. I'm not sure exactly how I would word it for an ordinance, but I don't have any problem with the concept at all. And I think, I don't want to pass over Vice Mayor Doring's concerns either about the way in which we're, asking in effect more of residents than we are businesses. I think this is another important question, but again, I'm not sure that's one that we can resolve this evening.
Thank you. I have a few comments, but I'm seeing Vice Mayor Doring.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that we have enough time for public comment on the issue, but maybe this question would be directed to our city attorney. So I'm not sure what the sort of the procedure is with an urgency ordinance, but it seems to make sense. It is urgent. It's all urgent to me sometimes means temporary, although I think urgency ordinance can last forever. Maybe not. Would it make sense to, well, not only from a legal perspective, but from a practical, logical perspective, to build in some kind of a revisit this in 3 months? I am particularly concerned about the fairness issue. When a resident comes to me and says, hey, we're asked to conserve a lot more, I don't know how that's going to play out. I'm open to at least looking at that to see what happens. Maybe 3 months is not enough time. Maybe it's 6 months, but to come back and revisit this ordinance and make adjustments as needed.
I see Ethan.
Sure. Would you like me to respond to Vice Mayor Doring's question now? I think he was directing that to me.
I have comments that relate, but I'll let you speak first, and then I'll touch base on it.
Sure. So what I would say is it's not at all unusual to include a sunset date in urgency ordinances or other ordinances for that matter, when it's kind of a testing ground and it's, you're viewing it as more of a temporary measure. The one comment I would make is that when the ordinance sunsets, the result is you go back to what you had previously. And I think the consensus of the council has been that that we don't think what we currently have on the books works very well. And so this may be something where you want to adopt the urgency ordinance tonight, but direct staff to come back within a specific amount of time to address these other issues, so that we have kind of a fixed timeline to within which to act and to come back and address these these very good comments. I tend to agree with Councilmember Hardy. I think these are all good comments, but things like the forecasting and that type of thing, I probably wouldn't want to make decisions on that without the benefit of our public works director, city engineer, and we don't have our interim public works director, city engineer on the meeting tonight. So so I'm reluctant to kind of go beyond what he's been comfortable with thus far. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to just jump in with some comments now. First, I want to say thank you to Councilmember Hardy. I think you've just done excellent work in identifying how we begin to look at this. I think that you're absolutely correct in that you pushed this to where it needed to go. And this other issue regarding the 10% versus the 30%, which I also recognize as an issue. I think you recognize that that was another segment of this. And so I think the work you've done is just excellent in presenting something that I believe is a workable foundational stone here. I'm going to open public comment in just a minute. But the idea of also, I want to recognize the May 1st date, if we keep that in what we do tonight, but also recognize Councilmember Hall's thoughts on a rolling approach as we kind of relook at this after tonight. So I think there's value in that as well. The 10% versus the 30%, if we recognize that crush harvest comes after this, late summer, that gives us a little window here to really work with our different users to understand what we can reasonably work towards together. It's a challenging situation. I mean, this is where the real conversation happens with water. We have a system with large users and small users on the same system, and finding everybody's equitable range is what's going to be key here. Use the simple analogy of a drip irrigation system with large trees and small flowers on the same system. They need different amounts of water, but they each need specific ranges to stay healthy. And so the conversation about what can happen after tonight, if we all concur that we're at a good spot with what's been presented, with the idea that something is written into it that takes this next period and looks at that 10 to 30 ratio and how we can work together with our large users to understand where maybe we can find some conservation there. That's, to me, an opportunity to show and really show what it's like when a community of all different size users works together to get through a very serious situation. So with that, I'm going to open it up to public comment and see if we have any comment on this from the public at this point. And Cindy, I'll look to you.
I do see one member of the public. Michele, I'm going to allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and you have 4 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Hi, hello, council. This is Michele Benvenuto with the Wine Growers of Napa County. And we appreciate the council addressing the current water emergency, the future water availability, and for recognizing that the previously proposed allocation process for non-residential users imposed a disproportionate burden on wineries. The entire community has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as 2 wildfires during harvest that caused unprecedented damage and economic harm. For wineries and vineyards, the losses are staggering. The glass fire alone could result in $1 billion loss to wineries. Hence, it is critical that the allocation process and penalty structure be predictable, fair, and equitable. establishing a water use baseline for commercial, industrial, and institutional users by using the average water use from the same billing period for the 3 preceding non-shortage years accomplishes this and provides a categorical fix instead of overwhelming the newly formed Water Advisory Board with exceptions. Finally, with the effective date being imminent, is there a plan to notify water users of what you guys adopt tonight? Again, thank you so much for taking up this important issue.
Thank you for the public comment. Is there additional public comment?
I'm not seeing any other hands raised.
Okay, seeing no additional public comment, I'll bring it back to the council. I feel like we're well on our way to a forward plan here. Are there any other comments or questions from council before we summarize and push towards a motion on this? I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy.
Yes, I don't know whether the council will prefer to do it in the text of the ordinance or less formally, but I would suggest that we, one way or another, schedule a review in 90 days. That would put us out, I'm thinking our second meeting in July is what I'm thinking. And at that point, we would have some, real data and perhaps some, customer response, both from the May billing metering period and the June billing / metering period. And with that additional information, I think it would be a good time just to have it as a scheduled item and get feedback from our customers and our staff and see where we are.
I'm amenable to that.
Thank you. I was just going to agree. I think it sounds great. I think we ought to approve this tonight as written, and regardless of how formal we want to be or informal, I just think any one of us can make a motion at some point to bring it back. I like the idea of Councilmember Hardy to gather a little bit of feedback first and see how we're doing as a community, and then table it again as needed.
Thank you. I certainly would like to get a firm date for coming back, just so that we give everybody assurance that we will. If we look at a 90-day period, I guess what I would want to see happening is if we're working with our larger users in that time period to try to identify ways to bring that percentage, that 10%, and seeing if we can find additional conservation that they can find either through measures in their operation, or perhaps they have other water resources that can be brought in. I think we're going to have to be innovative. We're going to have to be creative. We're going to have to do all our numbers, but we're going to have to look for who and where resources may be. We just sort of, as we went into COVID, we really, we knew we had a strong structure with our town and administration, but we didn't know the full extent of what we were moving into. I think in a water emergency like this, the same holds true, that we don't know what we're heading into. So let's all put our minds to where we have resources to bring. And so over these next few months, is there a way that we can schedule with our large users some workshops or some task force looking at where those savings can come on the large water user side? And with that, I can just ask that question of the city manager if he has any thoughts on how we might organize that.
Well, let me begin by saying I like the idea of a 90-day review. And when we look at the calendar, that would be the meeting of July 27th, I believe. We have a meeting cancellation on July 13th. And we are having conversations now with our larger water users. And I think that while we haven't had all of the conversations, we have conversations planned, and from those conversations, I imagine we'll have additional ideas and clarity on the conservation abilities of some of the larger users. So I think it's clear that that 90 days provides adequate time for those conversations. We're going to be working with our customers to look at ways that we can conserve and ensure that we hit the conservation targets that we need to hit under a phase 2 emergency. And just one clarification: the number 30% on the residential side, it's higher than that. When we model the implementation of the 65 gallons per person limitation under phase 2, that equates to approximately 43%. That's similar to the number that we shared when Raftellus initially brought to us concepts for a penalty structure. So we'll talk more about penalty structures in a moment, but this is helpful, I think, having a 90-day review.
Okay, and then a thought here: is there a way to memorialize the efforts we're going to make to try to bring that 10 and 30% closer together, and particularly if we talk about 43%, how do we bring those numbers closer together so we're sharing the burden as well as we can? I just would like to see if there's making sure we're memorializing that as part of the work that we're looking at over the next 3 months.
We're working with Raftellus now to look at options related to that. They did talk to the council and the staff at a prior meeting this year about potentially taking a careful look at the allocations and the differences in that. I think there's more work and study that needs to be done. So that's with a couple of months of data, it will provide us more clarity on some options that are available, along with potentially some additional ideas that come from the conversations with our larger water users.
Okay, very good. I see Councilmember Hardy.
Thank you. A couple thoughts. One, I'm wondering, and this is a question either for the city manager or the city attorney, I'm wondering if we can't simply continue this public hearing to a date certain and handle it that way. That makes it a solid commitment to the public, although it does relieve us technically of the noticing requirements. So, but one way or another, I think however we do it, we should be scheduling the next discussion on this for that second meeting in July. And then on the subject of, the difference between the residential numbers and the commercial numbers, I think it's important to keep in mind that the big difference there reflects the fact that residential landscaping is functionally a much bigger part of residential water use than landscaping is of commercial use. In fact, we have lots of businesses with no landscaping at all. And we have some businesses with dedicated meters for their outdoor use, which offers some other tools for conservation to keep in mind. But I think the reality is, no matter what number you choose, say 20%, a 20% reduction for a business is something very different than a 20% reduction for a resident. And that's where the hard part of coming up with an equitable result lies. We don't really have an apples to apples situation in terms of how our customers are affected by the reduction. So I think it's important for us to get the feedback from our customers, and it's certainly vitally important for us to communicate effectively about the importance of conservation and look for all the tools that we can to make that happen. And I think moving forward, and this is a longer term project, but we will be talking in the future about permanent conservation standards to address some of these concerns about water use on an ongoing basis. I think that's what we have to do. You're certainly going to hear about it from me. And now is an opportunity, I think a great opportunity for us to educate ourselves as a council and for our commercial users and our residential users all to be educated about what the opportunities for conservation are and why they're important. And through the process of being informed and informing others, I think we can achieve not only the goals that we need to meet to get through this current water shortage, but also can develop the tools we need to improve our situation for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent comments. And I think we can, this kind of focus on these issues will get us there. So looking forward to how to move forward here tonight. I'll look to Ethan. We want to pass, we want to have a motion here on what's recommended. And then how do we tie in that later meeting? What are your suggestions on that?
So I wouldn't continue this item to a date certain, because essentially when you take action on the ordinance, this specific item is complete. So you don't usually continue an item unless you're not taking action. But I think it would have the same effect if you decided to vote to pass this ordinance and in the same motion direct staff to return on a date certain, give the specific July date to return with to revisit this item. And if that's passed by the council as a body, then staff has its direction and we have to bring it back on that date.
So moved with the return on July 27.
And is there a second?
I'll second
that. Very good. And then a roll call.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Councilor Hall,
yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Thank you for the focus on this item. We'll move on to another water item now. We'll move on to item 10.1. This is consideration and approval of a resolution adopting a penalty structure for a violation of the city's Phase 2 and Phase 3 water regulations set forth in the St. Helena Municipal Code, Section 13.04.220. This public hearing item was continued from the April 13th, 2021 regular City Council meeting to the April 27, 2021 regular City Council meeting. And this is Dr. Mitz.
Thank you very much. So as stated, this was the first public hearing. This is a continuation of the public hearing we had at the last City Council meeting. To back up a little bit, on March 23rd, Ralph Tellis did present to the public and to City Council their recommended penalty structure. At that meeting, City Council did direct to come back at the April 23rd meeting for the, April 13th meeting. I'm getting my dates all mixed up. Anyway, recommended to come back. We did post the notice of public hearing on March 30th. We did bring this to council at the last council meeting. City Council did determine to go ahead and to continue this item to this meeting with the intention of knowing that an urgency ordinance was going to be able to be brought forth that would actually help in alleviating some of the penalty structures. What I did is I went ahead and prepared tonight, and I'll share my screen really quickly. Nothing has changed in the proposed penalty structure. However, I wanted to give the City Council and the public just an indication of with this updated penalty structure, without having, or with the updated urgency ordinance, without having to go through an exception process, this is what it would actually do to the penalties. And this is based on the 3-year average of 17, 18, and 19, and took actual water consumption for 2019. So I wanted to kind of make that distinction, knowing that this was before any type of, this is without any type of water conservation in effect, but you can definitely see what it had done to the samples. So you'll see in these slides, I have 3 restaurant samples. The orange line that you see was the current ordinance that we had in place. The green line was with the adoption of the urgency ordinance. So you can see in this one restaurant sample, out of all the samples that were done, this was the only sample that actually incurred a little more penalties under the new urgency ordinance. But that was the only sample, and the variation, if I just applied it straight across through the entire year, went from $261 in penalties to $409 in penalties. And again, that is one of the outlier due to how their usage, and that is definitely one of those situations where they can come work, talk to me, and then I can help them work through the process with the Water Advisory Board. The second sample you can see is this was the current ordinance. The urgency ordinance basically flatlined what their penalties would be. And this again is without any water conservation measures. Obviously, we're hoping that we can actually invoke some water conservation measures. The next one for the restaurant sample, again, the orange line is the current ordinance, and you see where it flatlined out for the urgency ordinance. So it decreased the penalties from $5,500 down to $226. For the winery samples, this is where you're going to notice the largest difference. So you have winery number 1, winery number 2. Again, the orange line was what the previous ordinance is. The green line is what was just adopted by City Council. And what you really want to do is look at the top here. If no water conservation whatsoever, it decreases the penalties from 5.1 million to about 86,000, from 149,000 down to 13,000. And then the 2 commercial samples, the commercial number 1, there really wasn't any difference in what the penalties would be, but then the commercial number 2, there was a slight difference. So I wanted to at least be able to present that so you can see the difference of the penalty structure, what it would do for those same samples that we presented before to what it does now. Again, we still want to promote water conservation. We need the water conservation. And I think the largest thing is we know that people can avoid any type of penalties by doing the water conservation. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions. If not, the recommended action tonight is to adopt the recommended penalty structure.
Are there questions or comments from council before I open it to the public? Seeing none, I will open the public comment and see if we have any public comment on this issue.
I am seeing no public comment.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the council, and after going through the previous item and knowing the work we've done here, feeling comfortable that we have analyzed this from a number of perspectives here that give us a good path forward. If there's no other is there any other council comment or question on this item? I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy.
Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth. Just a comment. It seems to me that it would be a good thing for us to bring this back on the same meeting where we're reviewing the urgency ordinance that we just adopted. It makes sense to me to look both at how we're structuring the restrictions and look at the penalties with the benefit of having some real experience or information coming from the first couple of months in which penalties can be applied. So my proposal would be to revisit this on July 27th as well.
I absolutely concur. I think that working forward with these together, and it's I think we're fortunate in this community that we can communicate with each other. It's going to be talking about data. It's going to be talking about resources over the next 3 months. So revisiting this, item at the same time, I think is critical. So I'm very much in support of that. Are there any other council comments? Or any,
Mayor, I had a minor procedural point. Just I wanted to be clear, since we did continue and reopen the public hearing for this item, that the public hearing is now closed. I know you took public comment, but I just wanted to make clear that you also closed the public hearing. So.
Oh, okay. Very good. So with that, is there a motion on this item?
I will move approval of the item before us, and also ask that it be brought back on July 27th as part of the resolution or part of the motion.
And do we have a second?
I'll second.
And a roll call, please.
Councilmember Hardy,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Very good. Appreciate the focus. Appreciate everybody being here. I believe this is our last item. And with that, if there's no other comment from council, as we move forward, I want to just continue reminding folks we're not through with COVID yet. We're getting there. Let's keep our protocols up with the mask wearing, the distance, and the washing of the hands, and then get our minds together as a community regarding our fire preparedness, our water conservation. We keep working together as a community. We get through all these challenges together. So thank you, everybody, and for all the excellent input and the good work. And we'll see you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.